Story 1. My boyfriend keeps trying to initiate intimacy when his mic is on. So me, 21 female, and my boyfriend, 22 male, have known each other for about 2 years and have been dating for 6 months. Usually he's very sweet and considerate of me and my needs. We spend ample time together and he has never given any indication of crossing my boundaries or being disrespectful. But recently, he's begun doing something that I now find a bit weird. He has a gaming setup in the nook of his apartment where he plays with some people and friends online often. He doesn't stream or anything, but there is a camera on his monitor that I've never seen on, but isn't covered by any tape. A couple of weeks ago, I was over and he was gaming, which was fine. I made some sandwiches for us because usually he's finished up within a few minutes. This time he took a bit longer than usual, so I popped in and asked what he thought when he thought he'd be done. I admit I did sit in his lap, but he took the opportunity to initiate some touching. One thing led to another, and we ended up being intimate. I went along with it, but moved to unplug his headset, and he didn't protest. That was that, and we spent the day together like normal. But then it happened again about a week later. He began maneuvering me into his lap during a game, even being verbal with the mic on. Obviously, this made me uncomfortable, so I asked him to turn it off as well as the game. He played it off like he forgot the mic was on, but I'm not so sure. Incidents like that have been happening 2 more times. Both times I declined before it got too far, but I'm wondering if something weird is going on. I got a bit paranoid and checked his monitor, but the camera was still off. I asked him to put some tape over the camera, and he got a little defensive, asking if I thought he was a pervert or something. He wouldn't let it go even after I explained some concerns with people hacking cameras and his mic being on. He shrugged and basically told me that it's not a big deal if people hear us, people do it all the time. I was in complete disbelief about that and upset that he didn't see the issue. That statement all but confirmed he was doing it on purpose, but he maintains that turning off the mic slipped his mind. So, am I overreacting? Is there something going on that I'm not seeing, or is it most likely nothing? I'm scared to ask my friends about it and similar experiences because it's a bit embarrassing, and this is my first serious boyfriend. Every time I try to have a conversation about it, he manages to make me feel like I'm making things weirder, bigger than they are. I personally don't think that he's trying to do anything malicious. I just think that he doesn't really care about that stuff as much as you do. Like, he sees a fun opportunity for a new kind of intimacy, and maybe it's a little bit risque or something. Who knows? And I don't think that's necessarily malicious on his part. What I will say is that if you sit down and have an open, frank conversation where you just say, look, this is just my comfort level, and I'm uncomfortable with the possibility of being heard, and I just want you to respect that. He should respect that at that point. But you do need to have that open, honest conversation about it, because in his mind, that first initiation of that happening and stuff, it was so exciting, he's probably not thinking it through otherwise. And so I would at least give him a chance by having that conversation. But then, if you have told him why you're not comfortable with that and like, hey, look, this is just my overall comfort, I'd appreciate this. If he still doesn't comply, then he's being a bit of a jerk, and then there needs to be a different conversation. Story 2. Am I wrong for choosing my friendship with my ex over the guy I'm dating now? The title sounds bad, I know. Please bear with me, I'll try to give as much context as possible. So, Ben and I have been friends for a bit over 5 years now. During this time, we dated twice, but never over 3 months. The first time was from December 2015 to February 2016, and the second time in May 2017. We split amicably both times and figured that we just work better as friends after all. We weren't romantically involved after that, but we kissed in a game of Truth or Dare in September. It basically confirmed to me that we're just friends because I felt nothing. Ben and I have so much in common, and we know each other so well that it's a running joke in our friend group that I'd be able to read his mind. Of course, this is not true, but we can talk to each other openly and are just really comfortable around one another. We helped each other through dark times, and I can always count on him. Ben is one of my closest friends who just happens to be my ex. We joke about our failed relationship like, what were we thinking, LOL, and stuff like, been there, done that, fool me twice, and so on. It's really just a joke to us by now, and we'll never try having a relationship ever again. Now, in late October, I met this guy. Let's call him Chris. We met at a party and hit it off right away. We had a deep connection and ended the night with a hookup. We didn't get in contact right away after that, but by the end of November, we started seeing each other. We haven't had the defining the relationship talk yet, but we agreed that we enjoyed getting to know each other and liked how things were for now. Fast forward a bit. My best friend and her boyfriend wanted to throw a New Year's Eve party. They invited all our friends and allowed dates to come along too. I thought this would be a great opportunity for Chris to meet all my friends officially. I already knew that Ben would be there, so I mentioned it to Chris. I had already told him that I was still friends with an ex before. Chris told me that he wasn't bothered and that it shouldn't bother him anyway since we weren't even official yet. I was happy that he took it so well, but reassured him that he could always tell me if he ended up being bothered, and he wouldn't have to play cool just because we aren't boyfriend and girlfriend yet. The night of the party comes. I introduce Chris as the guy I've been dating for a month now to my friends. We drink, we mingle, I catch up with them. Chris gets to know some of them and seems to enjoy it. Midnight comes and we start the countdown and I kiss Chris at the New Year's starts. After that, I make my rounds. I hug all my friends, wish them all the best, kisses on the cheek are exchanged, the usual. We celebrate some more, and nobody gets home before 5 a.m. Chris calls the next day and tells me he had a good time and I should thank my friend for the invitation on his behalf. I do exactly that, and my friend tells me how lovely Chris had been and jokes that I better make it official soon, or else someone else will see what a catch he is and snatch him away from me. Typical girl talk, you know? So it seemed that both my friends and my potential boyfriend nailed their first impressions. All was well until I met up with Ben for coffee on Sunday. Naturally, the party came up and I asked him what he thought of Chris. Ben was hesitant at first, but then told me that Chris had been a little frosty towards him. I decided to give Chris the benefit of the doubt. There were nearly 30 people at the party, and maybe he didn't get the chance to have an in-depth conversation with Ben, so I didn't talk to Chris about this and told Ben that he might just be imagining things. Ben agrees, and we don't mention Chris again for the rest of the afternoon. Which brings us to yesterday evening. I was over at Chris's place. We just finished dinner and we were watching a movie before hitting the sheets. The conversation drifted off and Chris asked me about my weekend plans. I told him that some friends and I would meet for drinks on Saturday to celebrate a birthday. Then he asked me if Ben would be there. Not really knowing where he was going with this, I answered that yes, he would also be there. And that's where crap hit the fan. In a passive-aggressive tone, he said how ridiculous it was, how much time we spent together, and that I should be with him if I loved him so much, and how I always spend more time with Ben than him, and how I hugged Ben for far too long on New Year's. I was so dumbstruck. Days before, he told me he was cool with it. He even insisted that he was not at all bothered, and now this? I told him that I've hung out with Ben only 3 times since we started dating, once for a Christmas celebration with some other people, once at the party on New Year's, and the only one time was the coffee we had on Sunday. I also hugged all my friends at the party and didn't really count seconds to measure who got the longest hug. I tried to tell him repeatedly that I have no feelings for Ben. I tried to reason with him, but he was really defensive all of a sudden and tried to argue with me. Even if I didn't have feelings for Ben, he would most likely still have the hots for me. That's where I got angry and told him that if he trusts me so little, we might as well end it then and there. He didn't want things to end, me neither to be honest, and told me that he could really see a future with me if it wasn't for Ben. I explained that Ben is my friend and I won't ditch a friend for a guy who is this insecure only a month into dating. I didn't spend the night and went home instead. I still really like Chris, but leaving friends behind is a huge deal breaker for me. He texted me this morning and asked me if I wanted to talk things over. I haven't responded yet, and honestly, I don't know what to do now. My head is a mess. I don't want to end things with Chris. It's been so good up until now, but I can't lose Ben either. I think that you should definitely keep Ben around, because Ben has proven to be a good, steadfast friend for at least 5 years. Chris has proven to be an okay boyfriend, possibly, for a month or so. Who do you have more of an investment in? Ben! I'm sorry. If there was, big reasoning, if you were always hanging around Ben and, really, really flirtatious and, ignoring Chris just to go off and mingle with Ben, yeah, maybe then Chris could be like, I know you two have dated and you still seem really, really close. And it kind of makes me feel like a third wheel. That would be a whole different situation here. But what we're talking about is ludicrous. You're allowed to be friends with exes, especially in that situation where you were friends, you tried dating, it didn't work, so you went back to being friends. Literally, just a few days ago, my partner and I hung out with one of her friends that they tried dating once. And guess what? I've hung out with him a bunch. He's great. He's my friend now. It's fine. It has never once been weird. Folks, you gotta get over some of this crap. And yeah, there are times where you can't be friends with an ex, where it doesn't work out, where they're holding on to feelings. There are exceptions, but this is not one of them. Seriously, if Chris keeps pressing on this issue, kick his butt to the curb, because Ben sounds like he could be a great lifelong friend. Chris, he hasn't proven crap, except that he's a jealous wiener. Story 3. Pregnant with my coworker's baby after a brief fling. Throwaway account because I haven't told this to anyone. So my husband and I split up in October. It came as a shock to me and I took it really hard. We had been married for 10 years, but he said he doesn't love me anymore and moved out. I found out later he was having an affair and left me for someone else. We have 2 kids together who we share custody of. Anyway, I was having a really hard time and was really depressed, but I went to my work's Christmas party after being persuaded by some coworkers. Anyway, I got a little tipsy at the Christmas party and ended up hitting it off with a coworker from another department. We were only ever acquaintances before. We exchanged numbers and texted each other and went on a few dates. It didn't work out because I just wasn't emotionally ready for a new relationship and he wanted to settle down. It ended amicably, though, and we still chat in the office. Fast forward a month, and after a missed period, I've just found out I'm pregnant, and the test said 2 to 3 weeks, so it is definitely my coworker's baby. I don't want an abortion because I've always wanted more kids. I didn't trap him, though, as I'm on the pill, but in retrospect, it probably didn't work as I was throwing up due to stress in the weeks and months before this. Anyway, how do I approach this? I don't know how to tell him. I've never been in this position before. Do I text him? Do I tell him in person at work? And what if he doesn't want it? It's going to be really awkward at work. What do I do? I mean, you tell him. You've got to tell him and talk to him and be open and honest if you're planning on keeping it, because I have a feeling eventually he might notice. Like, it gets to be a little hard to hide, you know? This isn't a sitcom where your character has less screen time for a while and is always carrying a box in front of them or something, you know? I mean, yeah, have the conversation and see what he wants to do. And I mean, if you're determined to keep it, that is your choice. And what that means for him, I don't know. But hey, you have some fun and there could be consequences, though. You were on the pill, it didn't work. I don't know. Nothing's 100%, right? No, this is awkward. This is an awkward situation, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But unfortunately, without wishes, it's come true for you. So talk to him, and I hope it's a positive interaction. Story 4. Don't mess with the crazy server. I worked at a wing restaurant several years ago. The place would get incredibly busy on nights where there were big sporting events on TV. There was an older server named Belinda who worked there. You know the type, very rough looking, obviously partied a lot in her youth. As she got older, she developed a taste for Vicodin. Anyway, another server named Karen told Belinda that she could get her some Vicodin. Belinda gave Karen money, and later that night when her shift was over, Karen miraculously had lost Belinda's money somehow. Well, Belinda wasn't the type to be played. She had lived a rough life and could be pretty vindictive if you screwed her over. The next day, there was a sporting event that brought a lot of people in. Karen was waiting at a party of about 8 people, and they were drinking and eating to their heart's content. They racked up about a $200 bill, and they were paying it as one check. One of the guys gave Karen his credit card to cash out the bill. There were POS stations placed sporadically throughout the restaurant, and it wasn't unusual for servers to gather around these stations to chat during downtime or to wait for their turn on the point of sale. I say this just to illustrate that it wasn't unusual for several people to be in that area or using that computer in the same time frame. Karen was at one of the POS systems cashing out her party table, and in her hurry to get back to her section, she accidentally left the credit card sitting beside the POS. She took out the credit card receipts and immediately noticed her error. She couldn't have been gone from the POS for more than a minute before realizing her mistake. At that time, Linda was watching the whole thing as it happened because her section was close to the POS Karen was using. She saw her leave the credit card behind, and she swooped over and grabbed the card. Belinda put the card in her apron, not with the intent of using it, but just to throw it away and get Karen in trouble for losing a customer's credit card. Pretty crappy, right? Well, as you can imagine, this situation quickly snowballed. The customer was not amused or understanding. He freaked out on Karen for losing his card, then he flipped out on management, who couldn't seem to make sense of what happened or offer a solution to the situation. Karen was a mess, crying her eyes out at this point. The customer accused her of stealing their card, and they called the police. The police showed up at the restaurant and questioned Karen. As the police were questioning Karen, Belinda panicked. She was afraid she would get caught with the credit card in her possession, so she slipped out the back door and threw the credit card into the dumpster so that it wouldn't be found. I'm not really sure what the protocol was with the police in this situation, but they took a report and noted Karen as the last one to possess the card. The customer canceled their card right there on the spot. Karen got a first and final warning against her from the restaurant, and she was fired within that week for forgetting to bring a soda onto a check. A totally harmless mistake that wouldn't have gotten anyone else fired. There was just no redemption for her at that point. Belinda never got caught. She was never found out by management or police. How was I privy to the information? I was dating Belinda's son at the time, and Belinda confided in me. In hindsight, I should have said something to clear Karen's name, but I just knew better. Belinda's life had been too rough. She didn't have much of a conscience left. You didn't cross Belinda without consequences. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want to get tangled up in that either. You know, that's a big headache for you, but I hate not getting the truth out there with that kind of stuff. That would eat at me. I would definitely try to pass that off to a manager and just be like, please just say that it was like anonymously, noted by like a customer who came back and heard about this, like some way. I would get that information out and clear Karen's name. Even if Karen lost that money and maybe deserved a little something for that, I don't know. Like, Belinda could have just been like, Karen, pay me my money back. Come on. Like, why do you have to try and like ruin someone's life, Belinda? Jeez, it's not cool. Story 5. Today I effed up by listening to what my wife said without questioning it. I'm sitting here in front of the washing machine wondering how the F I got here. This F up happened approximately 30 minutes ago. I had just successfully fixed the garage door. The guide wheel had popped out of the guide track and was causing the garage door to go up and down in a weird grinding manner. I was super proud and came upstairs from the basement, and my wife had just finished walking the dog and came in the front door. I greeted her, excited to brag to her about how I had just fixed the garage door. She handed me the poop bag and told me to toss it for her, and I put the dog poop to the side as I was telling her about how I fixed the garage door. A fly appeared out of nowhere on the wall right next to where we were talking. I've dealt with a lot of flies before, and I'm actually really good at killing them. The key is the flick of the wrist. You need to swing fast and hard and just slap down on the fly with a vengeance so you can make contact before it bolts away. I lined up my hand and was about to execute when she yelled at me, "Ew, don't use your hand!" I looked around and saw her flip-flop near the door, and she was like, "Just use the poop bag." I picked up the little green poop bag, lined up my shot, and slapped the crap out of that fly. When the bag made impact with the wall, it burst open. Crap flew everywhere. It sprayed on my face, it got in my hair, it was on the floor, it was on the wall. When I looked down, a big chunk was just in the center of my shirt, and it was on my jeans. I stood there in disbelief as my wife burst out laughing. My 2 young sons were just rounding the corner and watched it happen, and they started rolling on the floor, crying in laughter. Everyone was laughing and having a great time as I stood there wondering what the F had just happened. I took a shower, then realized that my only work-appropriate jeans had dog crap on them, so I went downstairs to do some laundry. As I sit here in front of the washing machine, I am still left wondering, did I even kill the fly? I mean, I don't even know what to say. Why, even if someone prompted you, why would you grab a bag of poop to do anything with other than throw it out? It's a bag of poop. Like, I want to handle that as little as possible, and if someone tells me, use the poop bag, my brain's first response, no matter what the situation is why would I use a poop bag? No, I don't want to do that. But you decided to just act on quick instinct, and well, the crap really hit the fly. I was trying to do like a crap hit the fan joke. Didn't really work. Neither did what this person did. Am I able to talk anymore? I gotta stop. Story 6. My entitled mother left our wedding because it wasn't sufficiently about her. When I, 31 female, had my wedding 5 years ago, we decided to host it at my wife's, 31 female, mother's house. We dressed up the garden and it looked magical. We were able to have a stunning garden wedding with about 100 guests, relatively cheap. On the big day, while getting set up, my entitled mom was buzzing around and making a complete nuisance of herself, trying to change how tables were arranged and allocated and bothering both my wife and I while we were getting ready for the ceremony. Our friend, who was the unofficial manager of the wedding, was doing his best to keep her satiated while also keeping her from bothering the brides. When it came time to speeches, I made mention of people who specifically helped and people who were part of the wedding party. My sister was mentioned, as she was part of the wedding party, and my mother-in-law was mentioned for partially funding the wedding and hosting it at her house, investing a lot of time and effort. In the end, my entitled mom did not get a mention because she did not help, but rather hindered, and has honestly never done anything to support us. When it became clear she was not getting mentioned, her family started shouting at me from across the garden, reminding me to mention my mother. Out of surprise and shock, I made a quick mention, but I honestly had no idea what to even say. It made no sense to me to mention her. Shortly after, she left in tears, and she took her entire extended family with her, about a quarter of the guests. Most of them didn't even say goodbye. It was a devastating amount of drama for what should have been a magical day. My dad handled it well and comforted us both. They are divorced. I don't regret not mentioning her even a little bit. All it did was highlight that she can't be trusted to participate in our lives in any important or meaningful way. The relationship has never been the same since, especially since she outright refused to apologize to my wife, even trying to compare her behavior with my wife being withdrawn at her family gatherings, since for some reason the entire extended family tends to pretend she doesn't exist. Totally bizarre. I'm glad my wife still loves me so much despite my insane mother. So what I'm hearing is that partway through your wedding, it suddenly got better by about 25% because some real butthole guests got out of your way. I know in actuality it was, as you said, kind of devastating and heartbreaking to have that happen on your special day. And it's crappy as hell that your mom did that. And yeah, I'm sorry, she sounds like kind of just a miserable, self-centered person. Weddings are about the people getting married. It's not about each and every other person. You're invited there to celebrate those people and just not make a scene, not make it about you. And if you're upset about her not being mentioned, quietly talk to her after, but don't be a spoiled brat and storm out. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.